The Sound Off Podcast. The show about podcast and broadcast. Starts now.
When did you first know that you wanted to be in radio?
I was 8 years old in the back of my dad's car. We were leaving the LAX airport. I know this vividly. Andy Gibbs, I Just Want to Be Your Everything, was on the radio, and the radio disc jockey came on after that song and said, "There's Andy Gibbs with I Just Want to Be Your Underwear." And I just thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. And I knew at that moment that I wanted to be the voice that came out of the box in the car.
Who was the DJ and what was the station?
I don't know. It was Magic. I know that it was Magic 106, which became Power 106 in LA. So I know it was the Big Top 40 at the time. But I don't know. I wish I did. Believe me. I wish I did. Yeah. I owe that guy a drink.
Were you raised on Power 106?
No, I was raised on Kiss FM, KHJ, the Mighty 690, Kiss FM, obviously, Power 106. And then when I became my own person, as we do when we're like 12, 13, we become our own people musically, right? I grew up on KROQ, KROQ. So.
Without dating yourself, can you tell me what years those were? You already kind of have by giving off the Andy Gibb part, so it's
yeah.
But I'm curious about.
I don't mind dating myself. I take myself out for a great steak. The 80s was KROQ.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all like Jed the Fish, and I mean my idol was Dusty Street. So all that. Richard Blade and Ramondo was in the mornings. They did all that stuff back in the 80s. And then Doug the Slug was one that when I really just figured out I could do radio, it wasn't something unobtainable. He was the guy that I just loved. And that was the late 80s, early 90s.
Not everybody gets such a privileged upbringing to get a station like KROQ
right,
like on their radio. It was just a handful of markets, especially in the 80s, that would be able to kick that out.
Yep. And I grew up on KLOS too, and the Mighty Met, KMET, because I bounced from parent to parent. My mom's side was the rock, going to Bob Seger and Van Halen and all that, AC/DC, and then my dad's side was the Puerto Rican side that was into more of the pop music, dance music end of things. So I got both ends, and then I went into alternative as my own self in high school.
Not a bad place to be for rock, Los Angeles in the late 80s.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, Van Halen, and we had Guns N' Roses and all that. And so being a misfit in high school, I hung out with the Iron Maidens and the Scorpion Kids and all that, with the Duran Duran and the Depeche Modes and the Punks and the Clash and all that. So I have a very diverse background as far as the group I hung out with and the music we listened to.
And what about your record purchasing history? Was it cassettes, then CDs?
Vinyl. I started in vinyl. Yeah, I started in vinyl. I used to go to vinyl shows in LA. We would go to like the LA Sports Arena and we would just search. And the big search was Teenage Enema Nurses in Bondage by Killer Pussy. That was the number one. Because it was the 45 Wrapped in the Sanitary was the hard to find. So we were always looking like for the coolest vinyl we could find. But yeah, cassettes and obviously CD and all that too. But I was a big vinyl head back in high school.
The year after you graduate, what do you do?
Man, I was flailing. I was in the medical industry. I was a medical biller, which is the most boring, awful job you'll ever know of. And it's funny because I use that today when I don't want to tell people what I do for a living, because I don't want to talk about who's the most famous rock star I've ever interviewed or whatever. I tell them I'm a medical biller, and they just go, "Oh," and then the subject changes. But I got that because I was a medical biller for about 2 years, from about 18, 19 to right before I went into radio.
Should I be taking that question off the list for later?
No, not at all. Yeah, no, that's all good.
Okay. When did you finally wind up making that decision? I'm going to get into radio, and how'd you do it?
I was medical billing, and we had a kid come in who he was in the he went into like the mail room of the company, and he told me one day, "Oh yeah, I go to the Academy of Radio Broadcasting in Huntington Beach, California," which was literally 10 minutes from my house. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And it just hit. And that was a Wednesday. By that Monday, I was enrolled. I did not hesitate.
How long did it take you to get a diploma?
6 months. And my final was building a radio station from the ground up, frequency, format, clocks, promotions, who's your competitor, who's your demo, I mean, everything. And I had to have recorded imaging, as well as a full layout of what the station was going to sound like. I picked a station, believe it or not, I picked a station that would go up against KSOL in San Francisco, which was a rhythmic, old school R&B. So I picked an R&B type station. That's what I found the hole in, I guess, in San Francisco at the time. And but I also had lectures from, well, the big one was Wolfman Jack. He came in and he lectured. He did a big lecture for us. It was cool. Yeah, it was great.
What do you remember from that?
Be yourself. I remember don't be fake. I think that's the biggest thing I remember is don't be fake. Because he was obviously personality radio. That was his lecture. And I'm big in personality radio. That's my thing. I'm a little too honest on the air probably. But that's what I remember from him was be real. Just be who you are.
So after you graduate from there, did you do an internship or where did you get picked up or what station did you get to go into?
I got a job. I was in Southern California in Orange County, right near Huntington Beach. And I got a job in Porterville, California, which was about 2.5 hours northeast. And it was just this podunk, incest is best, relatively speaking, kind of town. And so what I would do every Friday after I got off work, I would drive to Fresno, California, look for a place to live. But Friday night I'd get there, we'd sleep, whatever. I'd get up in the morning, I'd look for a place to live, and then I would drive another hour and a half into Porterville from Fresno, do a 6-hour shift of hot AC, or AC jazz, I should say. And then an hour and a half back to Fresno. At midnight, I would go back. So I got to get back to Fresno about 1:30 or 2 in the morning, sleep, look for a place to live, go back to Porterville, 6 p.m. to midnight. At midnight, drive back into Southern California, get home about 3:30 in the morning, go to work and do that Monday through Friday. And then on Friday, go do it again. And I did that for about 3 months. And then I moved to Fresno. And then once I did that, they gave me full time in Porterville. And so I did a 3-hour commute for about probably 4 or 5 months. And then I made a tape for The Edge in Fresno, which was an alternative. This is 1992. So The Edge in Fresno, a classic rock station and an active rock station. And The Edge picked me up right away. And what's funny is I ended up doing all 3 of those stations in a row before I left Fresno for Vegas.
That's an awful lot of rock in your ears.
Yeah.
What did you learn about California highway transportation in that era?
I mean, it was, the cows shit was terrible on the 99. I mean, you go through one patch outside of Bakersfield and wowza. It stunk. But I mean, it was easy. The fog was pretty bad at one point, but, back then it was easy. It was just really easy. And, when you're young and full of piss and vinegar and energy and all that, I mean, the drive was nothing. It was what I had to do it. It's what it took.
How do you tell the tale about a young woman going off to, some smaller market to go and do radio? That's not an easy move.
No. I mean, I look back at it now and I go, wow, it was determination. It was passion. There was some support. There was a lot of support involved too. Um, but yeah, it was. I can't believe it. I tell that story. And I go, wow, that was me. Like I mean, that was a lot. But I wanted it. That's what I wanted.
Well, I still can't believe they once left me in charge of a radio station at the age of 19 years old between the hours of midnight and 6.
I know, right?
Why do we find that? Why do we find this so weird? It was something we just did.
Yes. Yeah.
But by today's standards, we look and we go, I don't know that I would let my daughter do that.
Nobody does it though. That's the thing. It's like, there's nobody in a radio station past, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock anymore. Which is unfortunate, but yeah, that's how we broke in though. Right. I mean, I started 2 to 6. That was my first real air shift. That when the Edge hired me, I was 2 to 6. And then immediately I went 10 to 2. Remember that 10 to 2 shift at night, from nights to overnights? There was a 4-hour shift, 10 to 2. And then I went 6 to 10. And it was all within 6 months that I moved up that quickly to doing nights. And boy, did I have a good time doing nights. 22-year-old punk kid doing nights. Oh, it was a blast. I mean, that's nothing like it.
Yeah, if you explain that to a 22-year-old today, they'd be like, there was no such job. You're making this up.
No, it was so much fun, man.
Why couldn't you do that from your bedroom?
Yeah, exactly. Your closet, which is how it's done now, right? But it was a good time.
Give me your thoughts back to 92, 93 with so much that was going on in music at the time. If I recall, the LA hair bands were disappearing. The Seattle grunge music was appearing.
It was thick. It was big.
Yeah. Give me your memories of the time and maybe talk about some of the stories in the music meetings and discussions about what we should be playing on the air.
It was great back then because there was this, I mean, we're kind of in that stage a little bit now with the genre bending. But at the time, alternative radio in particular, because rock radio was really hurting because it was all that those bands were getting their asses handed to them and they didn't want to pick up Nirvana at the time. Right. Or at least go deeper than Nirvana. But for me, when I started at the Edge, we had this really rich mix of music where it was Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Rage Against the Machine and Susie and the Banshees and Depeche Mode and The Cure, Aztec Camera, Information Society, Pet Shop Boys. We had this mix that was just incredible. So it was really rich and truly alternative. And I love that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do now with the station I'm at now, but I'll digress back to 92. It was just a wonderful time in music. And I think a lot is it because the radio stations and the people in charge were more open to a diversity that they're not open to anymore. Like there's so much, like back then, man, we were like, it was just like this thing and breathe, just a lot of oxygen in the room, very colorful. It was wonderful.
How'd you play?
We're so lucky that we got that I feel so lucky that I was a part of that, that time.
Yeah, it was good. And I think it was good up until Napster when things began to change. So in your career throughout the 90s, where did it carry you?
Well, so I was at the Edge and then I ended up at Classic Rock, which was great for my on-air presentation. Cause on the Edge, I was just like wild, young and wild. And I went to a Classic Rock station where I got more, formed and understood more of the structures of being an on-air talent. And then I went back to alternative, and then I went to active rock. And when I went to active rock, which was KRZR in Fresno, that my program director there, he was amazing because he was just like, you have a blank canvas, go. It was very much like what Wolfman Jack told me, was what my program director was telling me. It was like, be you, don't hold back on me, go. And I let loose. And because of that, I was able to get the job at XTreme Radio in Las Vegas because I was a well-structured, crazy talent, and it worked. And so I was there for 4 years, and then I went to Comp 92.3, where not only did I hone my on air, but my interview skills and my programming skills, because I'm program as well now. And now I'm back at XTreme Radio, because COVID was mean and so forth. So I ended up back here, and it's a wonderful full circle. It really is fulfilling, and I'm grateful.
So tell me a little bit about those interviewing skills. And so give me an idea of where you started interviewing, because there's always a few uncomfortable ones when we do it, and then how it evolved.
Yeah. Well, when you first interview, it's just, that's actually one of the most difficult things for an on-air talent to do. Because you are dealing with so many different personalities, and sometimes they don't want to be there, and they just you got to get past I started interviewing in, well, I guess my first interview was actually at the Edge, was with X, with John Doe and Xene, from the punk band. But they were so good to me that I can't really remember how much I flubbed, But what I've learned over the years, especially when I was at Comp, was to dive deeper into them, look at old interviews, read more interviews, watch the videos, whatever, and dive deeper into previous answers, and go deeper than that maybe that interviewer did or could. Um, and so I kind of figured out a deeper way to, instead of, hey, how's the tour going? Like, of course they're gonna, again, the tour sucks. What? I want to go home. That's how we all start. Hey, how's the tour going? How was it recording the new album? Fucking sucked, man. We hated it. So just trying to go and finding the human element of them besides the music element of them. Right, just the human being in them is my focus, kind of like a rock and roll Barbara Walters almost, like really kind of trying to dig into their personalities beyond how great of a guitar player they are or singer or whatever.
Why is Comp special?
I was there for 18 years, man, and it fit my personality to a T. I learned the interviewing thing is big for me. That's a big deal. And so is the programming, understanding how to put it all together. Just not just musically, but imaging wise and promotionally and all those things. And I had all that at Comp. I was the assistant. And so it was just a wonderful time too. I mean, I was 30 or whatever, and it just was a really, really rich time in my career. And I'm really great. And I've worked for great people, and I worked with great people. And so I have a lot of, I have a lot of love and and for that time period. It is over now though. And I am now in a position where I can take all those things and even make it even stronger. And I'm rebuilding a station right now that was on the ventilator a year ago, and we're no longer on the ventilator. We're in the hunt every week of this race, or every month or every quarter, whatever. And I work with an incredible programmer, operations manager, who is insanely intelligent, and he shares his wealth of knowledge for the good. And I love working under him and learning from him. So I'm growing after a 30-year career. I'm still growing because of where I'm at, and it's amazing.
Yeah, so. And that's why you're here, because you caught my attention as somebody who's very forward thinking and is not dining out on what they know, what they've learned, and what they've seen in the past. I'm looking, oh, right. That's new. Okay, I'm stealing that bit. Oh, I like how this sounds. I'm not telling you what I've stolen, by the way.
That's okay. I don't mind. I think it's great. Somebody's stealing from you. It's worth having, right?
Tell me about the shittiness of COVID.
Dude, I was one of those people who, when it first came out, I was sharing the funny memes and the videos and laughing and joking. And then Ronan was like, oh, really? You think this is funny? Hold my beer, bitch. And I lost my job. I fought with unemployment forever, lost everything except for my house. and almost lost my life. I was before the vaccine came out. I got COVID. I got COVID, and it didn't seem bad, but then I got the long haul of it, and it put me in the hospital with pneumonia, sepsis, and a blood clot in my lung. And any of those three will kill you, and I had all three at one time. And then I was bedridden for months after that because of how difficult to recover that was from that. And so, and then it was still, a lot of struggle from there, and not knowing if my career was over, because of all of it, and that part was really scary, because it's all I've ever wanted to be ever since Andy Gibb, so it was really hard, and I'm so grateful to be, my career isn't over. And there was at one point when I took over XTreme thinking, you always think maybe the highlight of your career is past you, especially after 30 years. It's got to be past you, right? Or behind you, I should say. And all of a sudden, and during the takeover of XTreme, I remember at one point, I just thought, oh, wow, I'm in the middle of my highlight right now. 30 years later, I'm in the middle of the highlight of my career. And it was awesome. Just awesome. But COVID sucked. COVID sucked.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned long COVID, because I know a lot of people are skeptical, but as someone myself, I know what happens and I knew this before I even got COVID the first time. It's like a bug that comes into you and starts pulling at all the fuse boxes and the wires inside your body. And you don't know what goes out next. Congratulations, right. Here's tinnitus. It starts to serve you up all these things that you never knew existed. Asthma. Oh, asthma. Brutal.
I never had asthma. I have asthma now. It's terrible.
Ugh.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. 3 months, 4 months is, each time I get COVID, that seems to be how long it takes to recover. So I'm,
and when you get a cold, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit, oh shit. Is this going to put me in the hospital? Like, oh shit. Yeah.
Tell me about working for Beasley.
I work for Cat Thomas, right?
Yeah.
And he is an amazing man. Like I said, he is forward thinking. He's radio. He has, he's one of us. And he's also very intelligent in the respect of he knows what he knows. And he will tell you what he knows, and he will share with you what he knows. But he also doesn't know. He also knows he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he's okay with that. He's secure with that, and he listens, and he takes in what my whatever I have to say about something that from my world that he's never really been a part of. He respects it, and he listens, and he lets me be, and I have a lot of freedom, and he gives me that. And I can't tell you how much I respect that man, and how much I respect what he's given me, and where he's been, and where he's going. And I'm like, dude, do I need to learn hot AC to stick around with this dude? Because I'll learn whatever I need to learn to keep working for him, because it's magical. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy here at Beasley. Corporation wise, they're corporate like anybody else. And so there's good and bad. But I focus on the good, and that is Cat Thomas.
Yeah. And I've had a chance to meet Cat a couple times at radio conferences. And I perk up every single time,
Yeah. Yeah. He's great.
Yeah.
He's so great.
Pull out the pen and start taking some notes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. My office is right next to us now, and it makes me happy. It's just like I'm right next to the wealth of knowledge,
So help me out, because I don't see a lot of new rock stations. And by that, I mean, I don't see a lot of, mainstream rock stations firing up across Canada. Not as many in the US as well. But if you're going to put one on the air, what do I need to know? Because I've been out of rock radio now for 10 years.
Well, I'm at a hybrid alternative station right now. It's what we are. So we take the best of both. I
And
mean,
that might be the answer. Yeah.
I think that is the answer, because alternative itself, all by itself, is basically hot AC, and it doesn't match the library of alternative, right? It doesn't really. Noah Kahan doesn't really match up with Pearl Jam. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. For me, it's a mess. So for me, I take the Pearl Jam and the Green Day and the golds of alternative, the Killers and the Imagine Dragons and all that, and kind of hybrid it in with the Papa Roaches and Linkin Park, obviously, and those things. And with the newer music, I I go to the Falling in Reverse. To We're playing Hardy right now. I think the Point in St. Louis. I think they're a fantastic radio station doing it correctly. Um, and I love that model that they're doing. That reminds me of the alternative model that I had back in the day when I first started, but putting the rock to it. Because listeners are not like, I only listen to, they like that mix up a little bit more than we tend to give them credit for. So with a rock station, if you were to give me a rock station right now, I mean, I wouldn't be playing Cage the Elephant necessarily, but I would be playing, a lot of really cool stuff, and I would be looking at the alternative charts, and I would do what I'm doing now. I would just put some Ozzy and stuff in there. you know? And I hate to say this, but Nickelback and Creed, they gave up on they gave up on their pots of gold over there, and sorry, but Creed and Nickelback are making a huge comeback, and I would put that in the mix.
Did you see the Netflix documentary on Nickelback?
I did, yeah. And those guys are great. Chad I remember I interviewed Chad one time, and I told him, I said, these dudes are trying to like raise money in England to keep you guys out. They're raising money to ban Nickelback. And he was like, oh shit, let me give them some money. He like had such a great humor about it. And he's such a good dude, and they really are great guys. And they do make hits, and a lot of them. And I think that period of the hate is over, and we've all kind of grown out of it, and Creed too. And you go back to listening to it going, yeah, that was a great song. We were just oversaturated with all of it at one point. But Limp Bizkit, even for us, Limp Bizkit, they had a lot of hate there for a while. Now you see their shows, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you play Limp Bizkit? Look at all these people.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring you back to that period, 1999, when you would put a record like that on the radio, and then you get the phone calls and the pushback, and why are you playing this, and what's this rap doing with my rock music, and the chocolate and the peanut butter and Reese's Pieces and all that discussion. Yeah, but
that's because Reese's Pieces is a popular candy. That's why. I mean, Reese's peanut butter cups are the best chocolate candy in the world, right? So,
but you don't have those calls or discussions today. You just play the song.
I mean, look, we're playing Eminem. We're playing Limp Bizkit. And back in the day, in '99, Limp Bizkit, that wasn't a question about Limp Bizkit. They were huge, popular on XTreme Radio. And we played Eminem back then too. Outside of Detroit, we were one of the first radio stations to play Eminem. Because XTreme Radio wasn't necessarily a format, especially then, but as much as it was an attitude, right? And we still kind of fly by that, So, but when people say it to me today, why are you playing Limp Bizkit? I say, because we grew up. We grew up. We're over being mad at them about something. Look at the shows they sell out. Look at how many people love Limp Bizkit. It's no longer hip to just be anti Limp Bizkit. That we're older now. Let's grow up. That's what I say.
Yeah, and these, the song and the bands have heritage in the market and on the radio station, so we're past it now. Thank you. .com.
Yeah, it's great songs, man. It's great songs.
Yeah,
that's why they're great songs.
From the social media side of things, like one of the things I just love that you do on Instagram, and that's you take mail and you deal with the mail on Instagram.
Yeah.
How did this evolve?
Dear Carlota, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Carlota. Yeah. I love Dear Carlota. It's, it actually comes from a real, I started it because I was always giving advice to people in my life, just in my personal life. Always on the people calling me up on the phone, my friends, and I'm over there giving them the real advice or whatever. And somebody finally said, you really should just do something with this. And so I tested it when I was at comp and it went over really well. And I thought, I'm going to make this something because it's funny, it's real, it's really kind of the anti-Delilah, obviously, and but it's not politically correct, and I'm having fun with it. So yeah, I love taking the mail. I love the questions. I don't care what kind of questions they are. I'll answer them.
Is radio in Vegas different because it's Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be really different. Now it's like we are this incredibly busy city with so much going on that a lot of locals can't go do. We can't go do it. It's too expensive. Even if I gave you free tickets to Blink 182, you're still going to pay $150 in dinner and food and $100 to park. So we are of, the mindset that, locals can't really go do any of the things on the strip. Like we're kind of asked out on that now. We didn't used to be, but we are now. It's too much. It's great for the city. It's great, for the growth of this city, and if you have a house here, then it's really great, which I do. So that's good. But the Las Vegas has become an animal, and yeah, we're really not involved in it anymore, unless you work in it, unless you're on the strip, like a casino worker or something of that nature. But
what about the arrival of the sports teams?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
You a hockey fan yet?
It's been great. Huh?
Are you a hockey fan yet?
I am. I wasn't before, obviously. I never really understood hockey. But I had season tickets the first year, and I enjoy the game. I think it's actually the best sport as far as what they're actually doing. It's an amazing sport. They're amazing athletes. So I'm obviously a big VGK fan, because I never had a hockey team before that. I am a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan, and I have the Raiders in my backyard now. So I am now the enemy when it comes to all that. But oh well, I have fun with it. But yeah, I love that the sports is here. I'm looking forward to the A's. I'm an Angels fan, but they suck really bad and they disappoint the way they run their clubs. So I don't know if I'm going to switch allegiances there. It's hard for me to think that I would, but I mean, I'm excited for the A's. Excited for the Aces. I'm not a big basketball fan, so I don't run around with Aces stuff. But I think sports for this city has been incredible, and especially since we were told for so long that there's no way we would ever be able to support teams and that it would never fly in Las Vegas. And now we're just like the sports capital, especially with F1, which we hate.
Oh, yeah. What was going on there? That strange weekend you guys had.
Yeah, every team that's come into Las Vegas has had a lot of community outreach. The Raiders, the obviously VGK, the A's even, there's a community outreach. And they involve us, and because we're all part of the community, and that's great. F1 basically was like F you Vegas, and they caused a lot of traffic issues. They didn't care. A lot of businesses got hurt on that track area, and they just F you. That's what we call it.
Yeah,
that was their attitude towards us.
So I'm originally from Montreal, which is an F1 stop.
Yeah,
and same attitude.
Yeah,
for years.
It's that elite shit, I don't. I'm not down with it. We don't like it. We hope it goes away after it's like 3 year. I guess that's when they might up it, and hopefully they don't.
I kept a little spot in my heart for it because there were some bartenders and some restaurants that basically would say, we make our year on this weekend, but you're in Vegas. You can replace that weekend with any other weekend.
Yeah, we don't need it. It's cool. The night of the race itself is cool. I mean, it is. It's cool looking. But what it costs and what it does to the community is awful.
How did you not become a hockey fan in Los Angeles with Wayne Gretzky there in the early 90s?
Because I was in Fresno.
There we go. Thank you.
I was in Fresno, and I was in the middle of 49er and Raider country. And I'm such in baseball too, but I was such a huge football fan, that's kind of where that lied. Yeah.
And then had you not become a 49ers fan and you wound up being a Chiefs fan?
Good question. That's a great question. Because I was a football fan, but I didn't have a team because I was from Southern California, and I wasn't going to root for the Raiders. And my family was a baseball family. My godfather pitched for the Yankees. So I grew up on baseball, and I grew up on the Angels because we lived right next to Anaheim Stadium. So football wasn't in my world as far as, influence from my family. And so I taught myself the game and actually became a fan of the Saints because I like their colors. I'm an 8-year-old girl. I don't know. And so I was a Saints fan forever, but they were horrible and there was no passion. There was no connection. And so when I was in Fresno, I hated John Elway. That was the other thing. I just hated him. So my friend, though, was a big diehard Chiefs fan. And she's this diehard Chiefs fan in the middle of all these 49er Raider fans, right? And she was just Chiefs. And I was like, I love this. This chick is just outside the box, doesn't care what anybody thinks, which is way my style. And then I became friends with one of the receivers by the name of Stephon Page. And so by way of rooting for him, and then like, yeah, I like you, sister. Let's party. Let's go, death to the Broncos. I became a Chiefs fan.
I'm a Bills fan, but it all happens by accident, right?
Yeah, that's tough, man.
Sit around and wait for our annual game against the Chiefs and then wonder what happens until next year.
And, I love your quarterback. If I didn't have Mahomes, I would want Josh Allen. So, I mean, I love your quarterback, and I feel for you guys because we beat you, and we beat you epically, not in a way of like we stomp you. We don't. It's epic. These epic games that are like, what, I mean, you guys are a great team, and I mean, I feel for you.
Maybe this year.
Yeah, maybe. Hey. Anything's possible. I mean, we're going to be tough this year again, though. I don't know if you saw the receiving core, but our biggest weakness has been strengthened. So I'm not saying we're going to three-peat, but it's going to be tough to beat us.
Give me some more, because you've been on the beach for one point, and you've had adversity, and a number of times where you thought the radio thing is over. Give some advice to somebody who's listening to this right now, who wants to get to that position which you're in, which is energized, engaged, and excited about radio.
Well, that's the key right there, for one. To be engaged and excited about radio, and to stop having the doomsday thought process with it. I think radio is in a place where it could flip back, because a lot of the corporate radio stations, corporate companies are losing, and they're going to have to sell off. I'm not saying iHeart. I think iHeart is doing iHeart. But everybody's trying to be iHeart, and everybody's failing. Let iHeart be iHeart. Look at the radio companies that are winning. They're not on the NASDAQ. They're not trying to be iHeart. They are Hubbard. They are, small, family-owned, or mom and pop type radio companies that are focused on doing radio and doing radio the way radio should be done. And a lot more of that, I believe, is going to happen. And if you have that and you put the right people in the right seats doing the right things, I mean, everybody wants to play music from the 90s. Well, guess what? Radio needs a program like it's the 90s as well. That's people, engagement with the right soundtrack, the right personalities, the right soundtrack, engagement, and passion in the community, instead of this nonsense, corporate, voice track, who cares, AI shit. None of that is going to work. I think radio can really, truly make a big comeback. It's the only free thing left. Everything else is paying. Even the free, even your HBO subscription wants you to pay more to not have commercials. So, and you got to pay to have commercials, even with that. So, look, radio is free, and yeah, there's commercials, but so everybody else has them too. Get back to the basics. Get back to community. Get back to engagement. Get back to the personality with a killer soundtrack, and I think it's a winner. We can come back.
I love that
we are showing.
I love that you mentioned that. I had a conversation with somebody who was in finance, worked at a big company called Deloitte. And I said, how do entertainment companies make a go of this? Because they want results every quarter, and it takes 3 years to build an audience properly. And she looked at me and just said, don't go public. This is not for you.
Don't go public. No, because when you stop answering, in radio at least, when you stop answering to the community because you're too busy answering to the shareholders, you're done. And that's what happened with radio. And let me tell you a story about XTreme Radio. It was on the ventilator. In this time last year, I mean, literally to the date, because I took over July 28th. This time last year exactly, this radio station was 25th in the market. They were piping in shows from Detroit and wherever else. And it wasn't resonating, obviously, with Las Vegas. But the music was not, together. It was a lot of talk. It was a lot of talk from people who didn't understand this city at all. And we came on and we brought the music back and the personality back, which for the most part was me, because I've been here for 30 years or 25 years, whatever. And within a week, we jumped into the top 5. And Matt, we've never left the top 5. We just haven't.
It's incredible.
From 25th to the top 5. And we haven't left it. This entire year, we have been top in the ratings, bouncing around in the top 5. Maybe 6th in some things. I mean, literally, it's been dramatic. And that's because we have the right people doing the right things to the best of our ability with the tools that we have. And radio can do that. It can be a substantial being, viable thing in our lives again. It really can be.
I'm glad you mentioned
have
viable.
That's my advice. Have faith.
I'm glad you mentioned viable. We did have an executive in Canada say that radio was no longer viable. So glad you used that word.
Bullshit.
It is complete
Bullshit.
shit. Yeah,
Bullshit.
absolutely.
Yeah, it really is. Look, you can buy a radio station right now for $1 million that was $30 million 10 years ago. So it's a viable investment because it's buy low. Well, low is now. Buy low, put the right people in who've got passion, who've got knowledge, who want to do radio the way radio should be done, and you're going to win in your community. You're going to win.
What do you think year 2 and 3 of XTreme are going to be like?
What do I think?
What do you think the next 2 years of XTreme Radio is going to be like?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be great. I think we're going to continue to do what we're doing and strengthen and get much stronger. Look, a lot of people still don't even know we're here, and we're in the top 5. And they still go, oh, what? XTreme Radio? Are you kidding me? So we still have room to grow, like a lot, actually. So we're going to be growing, baby, because if you're not growing, you're dying. So, and we ain't planning on dying.
Going to repatriate all those people who might have veered away from radio.
Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of people tell me they turned off Spotify and came back. Because Spotify's charging more and you're getting commercials. And it's like, might as well just get it for free.
Carlota, thanks so much for being on the podcast, taking the time and doing this, and continued success. We love great radio stories.
Thank you, babe. I appreciate you.
The Sound Off Podcast is written and hosted by Matt Kundle. Produced by Evan Serminski. Edited by Chloe Emo Lane. Social media by Aiden Glassy. Another great creation from the Sound Off Media Company. There's always more at soundoffpodcast.com.